All right, I'll pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you for this time that we have to be able to talk together. I just pray for Andrew and myself that as we talk and discuss things, that you would give us your thoughts and your words, that what we talk about would encourage people, help people to think kingdom-minded, help people to be thinking about eternity and what is important. I ask for your grace and your mercy on our time together. In the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Well, today we're talking about something that goes far beyond medicine. Across Africa, millions of people lack access to basic health care, and many have never heard the gospel. But what if one movement could address both? A new state-of-the-art hospital, medical university, and research center is being launched in Rwanda with a vision to impact 100,000 communities across the continent. Joining me today is Bishop Daniel, president of GFA World. Bishop, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my privilege.
So this isn't just a hospital, it's a movement. What's the heart behind this vision?
Well, GFA World started about 46 years ago with a small prayer meeting in my parents' living room. Both of them had been involved in missions from a very young age. And over these years, what God has done is raised GFA World to do four things. One is support, raise up, train, and equip national missionaries, people from their own country who know the language, know the culture, can easily connect with people, sending these national missionaries to reach their own people with the gospel. Second is to help children have a future. Over 100,000 kids we've been able to help through our child sponsorship program, one of the greatest ways to break the cycle of poverty. And then disaster relief, where there's earthquakes and tsunamis in many of these places, either in Africa or Asia, bringing hope and assistance. And then compassionate care in these communities. So seeing these communities transformed by Christ's love, either through water projects or education or medical, kind of like what we're talking about today. Ultimately, what we'd like to see is a place of worship established in that community so the people can be established in the faith of Jesus Christ. And so this is kind of what we've done over the last 46 years, and millions of people really have seen their lives change because of all this. But, what you mentioned about, the opportunity for people that have never heard about Christ. I myself had this experience where you go into a village somewhere in Africa or Asia and you ask the person, do you know Jesus? And the person will respond something like this. I've lived here my whole life. My friends are here. My family's here. Your friend Jesus is not here. Maybe check the next village down that road and you might find your friend Jesus. These are the places where GFA World really focuses on, places where people are still waiting to hear about Christ, sometimes for the very first time. And it's a joy and a privilege that we can give our life so that we can bring Christ to these precious people.
So you used the phrase Christ-centered healthcare. That's powerful, but what does that actually look like on the ground?
When we've done medical camps, it might be an eye camp or a small, just doctor's camp. We will go into a community and everyone in the community is welcome to receive, a checkup or some sort of medical care. Sometimes this is the very first time that they're getting a checkup in their entire life. And while they're there, we're able to share Christ's love with them, able to minister to their needs, but also the missionaries and the pastors afterwards can follow up with these people in their own community to see what they need. Is there things they can be praying for, serve them in some kind of way? During the COVID crisis that happened in many parts of the world, while everyone else was shut down and not able to go out, we were able to, with permission from many of the governments, continue to do outreach, providing food. My father, who was the founder of the ministry, he actually was telling our people on the mission field, call every person in the village, find out, do they have any prayer requests, find out if they have any needs, find out if they have any food. If they don't have food, go to the store in the town, beg for food and say, this family is starving in my community. Would you please give us some food? And then take that food to that family and tell the family that that shop owner gave you the food. Give them credit for that. But we saw during the COVID situation, more people were coming to Christ because we were using and seeing the opportunity to serve and to see what the basic needs are. So when we talk about Christ-centered compassionate care, medical care, it really is serving the physical needs of the person, but also knowing that we can minister to the spiritual needs of the person and seeing them experience Christ's love.
So take us back for a moment. Was there a defining moment when you knew this was something that God was calling you to do?
Well, I mean, I was born into the ministry. Of course, my parents founded the ministry. I had the privilege of growing up both in the East and the West. So parts of Asia, part of the year, and then part of the year here in the U.S. And so I had a kind of a very unique experience in both sides of the world. But that's given me a huge privilege to be able to now serve as the president of GFA World and having that experience. So growing up, I got to go into the slums. I got to go into the towns. I got to see the ministry among the homeless and the leprosy colonies, to be with the students that are in training to be sent out as national missionaries. I got to see it all and experience it all. In fact, even after my high school studies, I had the privilege of going to the mission field for quite a number of years. But I remember when I was younger, there was a time, that I had a sense that God was leading me to also serve within GFA World in ministry. Didn't know exactly what that would look like or how it would pan out. But, God usually leads us little by little, step by step. He doesn't usually tell you your whole life ahead of you, because you'll be too afraid and you'll kind of run the other way. But obviously, I'm privileged to be having grown up in a missionary family, having that experience. But then, my father even told me that, I could do whatever I would like to do. I just need to serve the Lord in that, whatever I wanted to do. But I knew that God was calling me into missions. I knew that God was calling me into the ministry. And after high school, I did my seminary studies and then spent some more time on the mission field. And then later had the privilege of serving in leadership and speaking at churches on behalf of those who still wait to hear about Christ for the very first time.
So why Rwanda and why start there?
Most of our ministry over these many years has been in Asia. It's been the place where God has led us. And then through a series of events, there was an opening for us to visit Rwanda. Someone invited us and said, we know what you're doing in Asia. We know the medical work you're doing there. It's incredible. Why don't you come to Rwanda and see the open door? Maybe God would lead you there. Now, the only thing that we knew about Rwanda at that time was that's the place where the genocide took place. And people kind of vaguely remember that. It's not too long ago that happened. It was in 94. And so we went there, and God opened up so many doors. We met so many people that were saying, this would be a perfect opportunity. There was an area where we could eventually build a hospital that was, shown to us. The whole culture in the country is dramatically changed. Really, the Christians in that nation really rebuilt the entire nation. And going from a disastrous genocide to now what it is, where it's a very stable nation, Rwanda is the launching pad for reaching all of East Africa and then all of Africa. So while there's many places in Africa that we could have started the work, God's providence is that Rwanda would be a hub, a safe place, a place that's favorable towards Christians, but also that we could establish this hospital. So it would be a vision for medical and missions, not just for East Africa, but the whole of Africa. We're already in Liberia, we're already in Sierra Leone, we're already in Uganda, we're going into several other places. So the dream and vision is this: not just a few countries in Africa, all of Africa. And with the experience that we have from the 46 years of national missionaries and helping children and medical and like all these things, community transformation, we can bring that experience and we can bring it to the continent of Africa and seeing God do incredible work. Now, ultimately, we want to see national missionaries raised up from Africa, from these nations, to reach their own people so they can own it. They know their people, they know the culture, and they know the language. And it's us on this side of the world where we can partner with them in our prayer and our support to link our lives with them to fulfill the Great Commission. Many of these nations are closed or restricted for outsiders to come in, but the Great Commission is still in play, and we have the great privilege of being part of it.
So let's talk about the scale of this. We're not talking about a small clinic. This is a 300-bed specialist hospital, a medical university, and even a research center. What makes this project different from anything else that you've done in the region?
I think what makes this unique is the if we were just wanting to build a hospital, okay, we build a hospital, and then that's the end of it. The hospital really is not the end. This is just one of the many pieces of reaching all of East Africa and all of Africa. So having a hospital, it creates inroads into all the other nations. It also helps us to establish the work in East Africa, being able to reach the rest of Africa. Having a research center means we're able to bring hope and healing to Africa. Most people don't realize, I think it's like less than 2% of all medicine is actually produced in Africa. I mean, this is a huge continent, and such a small percentage of the medications is actually produced in Africa. So having a research facility, whether it's cancer research or medical research in other fields, means you are bringing expertise to Africa. You are bringing the benefits to Africa. But having a specialized hospital, a tertiary hospital, 300-bed hospital there in Rwanda, many of the people actually will go outside of Rwanda to other countries to get operations or get medical treatment. There are hospitals and medical facilities in Rwanda, but oftentimes they lack the staffing. For example, you could wait 6 months for an MRI. You might have to wait for an entire year if you have a cardiac issue and you need an operation. So us having a hospital and then a medical college means doctors from Africa, Rwanda, and other nations can be trained. It means that we will be able to train missionary doctors to be able to go into all these parts of Africa. Later on, when the hospital is running, we actually have the opportunity for doctors and nurses around the world or teaching professors in the medical field to come and serve at the hospital for a time. And we would love to connect with anyone who would love to serve in that way. But really, the hospital is going to be a highway for medical and missions through God's love, through excellent care, through meeting people's physical need, but also meeting their spiritual needs. In Asia, when we've done medical treatments and things, oftentimes our doctors are even praying for the patients, and God answers prayer. So even before they need the operation or they need the treatment, God has actually answered prayer. In the hospitals in Asia that we assist, there are hundreds and thousands of Bibles that are actually taken from the little racks that we have for free distribution. So people come to the hospital, they receive the physical treatment, but they leave with something spiritual for their life also. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to have a state-of-the-art hospital in East Africa, a medical college for training, and also a research center, which is all Christ-centered.
So you'll be offering specialties like cardiology, neurology, and intensive care, and treating potentially over 500,000 patients in just the first 2 years. That's massive. How do you even begin to build something like that?
Well, with some of the hospital, projects that our field partners have in Asia, we already have the experience of doing this exact very thing. So this is not something kind of brand new. This is not a jump from doing medical camps in a small way in these small villages to a giant hospital. So we have many, many years of hospital expertise. In fact, some of the doctors and lead surgeons that are in the hospital in Asia will actually be going to Rwanda to set up the different departments and to get things running. Ultimately, we want to see people from Africa itself raised up in doctors and nurses so that they can be trained also. But this won't be a difficult thing to do since we already have the experience of doing this. If it was the first time, yeah, that would be a little bit challenging. But by God's grace, over this many years, we've had many, many good experiences that God is allowing us now to bring to the continent of Africa.
So this goes beyond one hospital. The vision includes training 10,000 missionaries, reaching 100,000 communities, and providing clean water for millions. Paint the picture for us. What does a transformed community actually look like to you?
When some of our missionaries will go to a community, I'll give you an example. Sometimes they'll go door to door in the village. And when you talk about a village, some villages are, 100 families. Some villages are 500 families. Some villages are 100,000 families. In the mountains of Nepal, a village might be 10 families. 10 families here, a whole half day's walk, another family, 10 families on that side of the ridge. So it's different from each community. But the missionaries will pray and fast and seek God and ask God to go before them. And then they'll go door to door and knock on the doors and say, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can be praying for you? So in this one particular village, our missionary went to this house and asked the family, is there anyone I could be praying for? Is anything you need? And they said, oh, yes, someone in our family is sick. Could you please pray? So they led the missionary through the house, and there in the backside of the house was a water buffalo. They said, our water buffalo is sick. Could you please pray for our water buffalo? Now, you got to understand, they milk the water buffalo and sell the milk, and the money from selling the milk is what they use to buy food. So if your buffalo is sick, you don't have food, and it's a very poor family. So they're like, we heard what you said about Jesus. Can you pray for our water buffalo? So our missionaries laid his hands on this stinky water buffalo and said, God, if there's ever a time to do something, this is the time. And God healed that water buffalo. The water buffalo was healed, began to eat grass. The whole family gave their hearts to Christ. The neighbors heard about it. They gave their hearts to Christ. There were so many people in that community that gave their hearts to Christ that a church was established in that community because of a water buffalo that was healed. Now, this is a typical way that many of our missionaries will go. They go house to house, praying for people, talking to people, giving out gospel tracts, but also, like one of our missionaries who went to a certain community, and when he saw that they lacked water, clean water, which millions and millions of people in the world lack access to clean water. People don't realize it. It is one of the biggest crises in the entire world. He saw that 18 children had died in that village. They had a plaque with all the names on it because of malnutrition and lack of clean water. And so he was able to help get a Jesus well put into that community. So a Jesus well is a bore pump well, kind of the old hand pump wells like you see on Bonanza and the Rifleman and, Andy Griffith. Those wells still exist all around the world. They're great. Drill hundreds of feet down, hit the water table, and you have clean water. And so we put in over 40,000 clean water projects in different communities in Africa and Asia, helping bring clean water to people's lives. In other places, it's literacy. So we have about 9,800 groups of lay women that teach literacy to the other women. The women in Asia and Africa are sometimes the most forgotten group, especially when it comes to literacy. If people don't know how to read and write, they oftentimes are locked into the cycle of poverty because they can never improve themselves, and it affects their kids in going forward. And so thousands and thousands and thousands of women across Africa and Asia are being helped with literacy. In other places, it's crops. They need help with gardening. So it really changes according to the situation. Other places might be the children need education. And so community transformation is going into community with Christ's love, sharing Christ with them, but seeing what are the actual hindrances of that community that are needed to change in order to uplift them. Sometimes literacy, sometimes the kids going to school, sometimes water. So for example, most people don't realize that if there is a need of clean water in a community, the girls and the women oftentimes have to walk miles away to go fetch water, which means these young girls can never go to school because they're always fetching water. So if you provide clean water in a community, in effect, you are impacting education, health, the economy. You're also keeping them from being kidnapped or pulled into the sex trade or being attacked by wild animals. Just one simple project of clean water has an enormous effect of the entire community. And if that girl can get educated, it impacts her family and generations down the road. This is just one small thing. So when it comes to community transformation, we see what the needs are. With Christ's love, we go meet those needs. And ultimately, we want to meet the physical need and the spiritual need, and also see permanency there with a place of worship.
So some people might wonder, how do you balance medical care and sharing the gospel, and how do those two work together?
When Jesus saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion. He saw that they were helpless and harassed like sheep without a shepherd. And so the very beginnings, the very heart of everything that we do really is, God, would you fill my heart with compassion for the people that are there? Would you fill my heart with love for the people, whether it's in the leprosy colony? These are precious people that need to know you. Or it's working in the slums and you see the children playing in the sewage. God, you love the children. Or you see the abandoned widow, like the widow that was in a village that was 102 years old, and she heard about Christ for the very first time. She said, I waited my whole life to hear about this Jesus. And so with a heart of compassion is the guidance that is needed when we see medical and we see Christ's love going together at the same time. The motivation is always the key. The motivation is we love Christ and we want other people to love him also and to know Christ and to make him known. This makes it possible that our medical care will always be Christ-centered, and that we don't forget that there are spiritual needs also along with the physical needs.
So are you already seeing signs of this kind of transformation happening in Rwanda?
Absolutely. When I had the privilege of visiting Rwanda a couple of times, actually just not too long ago, the first time I went to Rwanda, I went to this village, this community called Red Zero, which there's about 700 families or 900 families that we're helping to minister to their needs. And I got to see the initial work. Some of the kids were going to school, were meeting with the parents, visiting their homes. And then I got to go back a second time to the same community, and I got to see people's eyes were bright. They were excited about the change in their own lives. They were excited about their kids getting educated and being helped. I got to distribute the uniforms for the kids for their school year, but I didn't realize the parents had learned how to sew. So the parents are learning how to sew as a trade, and they got to sew the very uniforms for their kids. And I'm like, this is amazing. It's like a win-win on every side. The community's blessed, the parents are blessed, the kids are blessed, and they know that we love them and they know that Christ loves them. And you can actually see the entire community changing more and more because they're experiencing God's love.
So one of the most interesting parts of this is your focus on training local African leaders. Why is it so important that this movement is led by Africans?
If people read my father's book, Revolution and World Missions, it's a book that's got 4 million in print. It'll ruin people's lives if they read this. I would encourage everyone to get this. It'll wreck your life. You can write to us and get it for free. Actually, if you go to gfahospital.org, you can learn more about the hospital, but you can also check out this free book, Revolution World Missions. So my father wrote this book as a challenge for Christians in the West to not give up on the Great Commission. After World War II, many of the nations within the 1040 window, so when you look at a map of the world, there are the latitude lines 10 and 40. within that block, it goes from parts of North Africa all the way to Japan, up into parts of Russia, and down past Southeast Asia. That's simply a marker to identify here are the places that have the least amount of resources going for missions. The most amount of people are waiting to hear about Christ. The most people groups, the most unreached are in these areas. And so what my father's proposal is rather than just simply saying, after World War II, many of these nations were closed. I guess we just give up and don't do anything and focus on the other areas of life. He's like, why don't we support and pray and link our lives with national missionaries? They already know the language. They live at the level of the people. They know the culture. They know the mannerisms. They love their people so deeply. We can trust them. And he's like, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Starbucks and all these companies already use national leaders in all these nations. Why is it in that missions we're not doing this? He was never against people going cross-cultural. He's very happy for anyone to go. He would call it disobedience if someone doesn't go. But he's like, you've got these nations where in many times the most effective and the only people that can go are the nationals. So he saw the need for training, equipping, supporting, and sending these nationals as the way to fulfill the Great Commission. But also for us, the benefit is our heart. Our heart is changed. Our heart is gripped with the things that grip God's heart. And so the same thing in Africa. We've got 46 years of experience that now we can bring the same experience to Africa, where God can raise up these wonderful African men and women of God to reach their own people. They are the best people to reach their own people. They know their people, they love their people, and they have a passion to see God's work being done. And so this is a privilege for us, but also a challenge for all of us who follow Christ, that we would not give up on the Great Commission. We would link our lives with those who are reaching their own people for Christ. And it's a great privilege and an awesome experience.
So how do you ensure that this isn't just a short-term mission effort, but something sustainable for generations to come?
The only thing that you see of permanency, you see it actually in the book of Acts. You can go through the Gospels, especially the book of Acts, which is the history after Christ's resurrection and then missions. So if you want a blueprint for missions, it's the book of Acts. Missions went out, places of worship established, more missions went out. So the only thing of permanency is the church. The Holy Church is the only thing of permanency. There are the history of many, many missions groups and missions efforts, but unless there was church planting at that same time, you don't see permanency. My father wrote another book called Come, Let's Reach the World, which is an answer to that very question. So when you have missions efforts and you have church planting, then you have permanency, because the very heart of the church is the worship of God, but proclaiming Christ's victory over sin, Satan, and death to the whole world to establish his kingdom. And so, what we've seen is these national missionaries go out to the villages. Many times they are persecuted, they are beaten, sometimes martyred for the faith. They are relentless, they are equipped. And when they go to a community, they live their life to see a place of worship established, but not just that's done. They want to reach the other villages around there. This is what we've seen the last 46 years of God doing incredible work. And this is what also I believe makes GFA World unique, is that it's not just national missionaries, it's national missionaries combined with the focus of community transformation, combined with the focus of seeing a place established for worship, so that the people can worship God, but the rest of the communities around there can also come to know Christ. This is what we see in the book of Acts. This is what we're seeing lived out practically even today.
And what role do partnerships play in making this vision a reality?
In Romans 10, we see, how can they hear unless someone go and preach? And then the question is, how can they preach unless someone sends them? Beautiful are the feet, are those who go and preach the gospel. And so what you find is, even there, it's saying someone has to go, someone has to be sent, and someone has to be praying and supporting. And so you find that the role for all of us is, one, our hearts need to be filled with compassion. The Christian life is not just living our life morally better than everyone else around us. The Christian life must be aimed at something. Know Christ and to make him known. Those are the two things. Know Christ and to make him known. A lot of us are good maybe at the first one, but we forget the second one, to make him known. And that doesn't simply mean to let our neighbors know and our friends at work know and our classmates know. That's true. Do that. Carry gospel tracts, do that. But it also means, God, there is a world out there of people that are still waiting to hear about Christ. How can you use my life to make a difference? And so I would give 3 suggestions for that. One is to commit to pray. Get a world map. Stick it somewhere in your home. And when you read about things in the news, or you watch on television or the internet, and you hear about wars or famines or crises that are happening, get the whole family together. Find that country on the map and begin to pray. People can also use Operation World as a great resource. There's an app that'll help you pray through every country of the world. But begin to pray. Become a world-aware Christian, that we are aware of what's happening around the world and we begin to pray. I would challenge every church, every Sunday, to take 2 minutes out of their service and pray for missions. Pray for your own missionaries. What did Jesus say? Lift up your eyes. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out more laborers into the fields. Every church should be praying 2 minutes each Sunday for missions. Pick a country. Pray for missionaries. Pray for more missionaries to go out. Second is, I would encourage people to simplify your life. It means pray and say, God, would you go with me through my life, my lifestyle? Would you help me to see if there's anything I should do differently, give up, change, so that I can use those resources for your glory? So for example, there's no 10 commandments of simplifying life, but for example, maybe instead of buying the 10-gallon cup of coffee every day, maybe buy the 5-gallon cup of coffee. 10 cents means 100 gospel tracts. 100 gospel tracts. Each gospel tract is read by an average of 10 people. Maybe it simply means I go out with my family 1 time less this month and use those resources. Maybe it means 1 meal a week my family just eats rice and beans, just like some people in the mission field. And we can use those resources that we save for buying gospel tracts or Bibles or supporting a national missionary or helping someone to learn something about Christ. So pray and say, God, what would you have me to do? Change in my life, give up, so that I can use those resources for God's glory. My father would often say this: take your present age, add 100 years to your life, and then ask the question, what actually matters? My father, just this week, it'll be his 2nd year anniversary of going to be with the Lord. To the very last day, he was focused on following Christ, but making him known. He knew his life was very short. Do we know that our life is very short? We only have a certain amount of years to live our life focused on God's glory. What will we do with this precious gift that God has given to us? The third option also is, if people can support a national missionary, support a national missionary. It's literally about $1.50 a day. You can't even buy a half a donut for that now. It's $1.50 a day. You can help support a national missionary, linking your life with someone who is on the mission field in one of these countries in Africa and Asia, and you can fulfill God's great commission in prayer and support, just like Romans 10 says. So people can learn more if they go to gfaworldhospital.org. They can learn more about the hospital. They can learn more about the ministry, how to support a national missionary. But these would be my 3 suggestions for fulfilling the Great Commission: pray, simplify, and support a national missionary.
So looking ahead, where do you see GFA World in 10 years from now?
What I would love to see in the next 10 years is the hospital established. I would love to see 500,000 children supported in our sponsorship program in Africa and Asia. I would love to see thousands and thousands of national missionaries raised up to reach these nations of Africa. It's over 1 billion people in Africa. There are so many people. I would love to see tens of thousands of Jesus wells established in these needy nations, providing clean water. And I would love to see hundreds of thousands of women raised up, trained, equipped in reading and writing, but also in being able to support their families. And it's already starting, but by God's grace, we'll see even greater things happen. Ultimately, we want to see a place of worship established in every community so they can also proclaim Christ's victory over sin, Satan, and death.
Do you believe this model could reshape how missions are done around the world?
I absolutely believe that this can be a model for missions done around the world, whether it's cross-cultural missions or it is national missions. Both are needed. It's a both and. The model is the book of Acts. So you're taking a model that you see when Jesus, walking beside the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Andrew and James and John and his brother. You see that he said, "Come, follow me." And they followed him. So we actually see, Matthew's Gospel, chapter 4, you actually see Jesus picking up these men from their own region, having them walk with him for 3.5 years, then sending out these disciples to different places of the world. These disciples went and had followers in those areas, established missions in those areas. And so then you see it played out in the book of Acts. So national missions and missions of any kind is actually modeled in the book of Acts. But what you see in the book of Acts, places of worship was established. It's not just giving gospel tracts and proclaiming Christ. It is that a place of worship is established, and then from that, more missions takes place.
And on a personal level, what would success look like to you?
When I went to the slums and I saw the children who were smiling because they had experienced the love of Christ, that is success. When I got to serve in the leprosy colony with our Sisters of the Cross and being able to feed some of these precious people who had contracted leprosy, and they have joy on their face and hope in their eyes, maybe not hope in this lifetime, but hope in the resurrection of Christ, that's success. When one person receives a gospel tract and their life is changed, that is success. But I'll also say, when one person is willing to take the challenge and support a national missionary, and I see their life experiencing God's joy because now they're living with an eternal perspective, that is success. It is not just what happens on the other side of the world, it's also what happens right here. If I get to meet someone who now is going to take missions and pray faithfully each week for a few minutes, that is success. Success is not numbers. Success is lives being changed, whether it's on the mission field or whether it's here. Success in God's eyes is one person at a time being changed into his glory.
So for those watching right now, what can we do to be a part of this?
I would encourage people to go to GFA World. Actually, go to gfahospital.org to learn more about GFA World's work in Africa. We'll learn about the hospital. Get the book, Revolution World Missions. Again, this will ruin your life. Plus, Christmas is coming up pretty soon, so you can get more copies of this and give it to your friends. But I would encourage people to, one, pray that God would fill your heart with compassion. Second, I would encourage people to seriously go to gfahospital.org and learn more about the ministry. Maybe there are those who would love to serve with us here in Texas at our headquarters. We have opportunities to serve. We also have an apprenticeship program for young people 18 and older to be with us for 6 months here at the ministry to experience what it means to serve the Lord in missions. But I would encourage people to go to gfahospital.org, learn more, see what your life can do to connect with us, and see how God can use your life to impact a world out there that is still waiting to hear about Christ for the very first time.
This is more than medicine. It's more than missions. It's about transformation, body, soul, and community. If you want to learn more, like he said, visit gfahospital.org. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Bishop Daniel.
Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you.